Tonight, Basildon in Essex sees the second highest number of COVID cases in England. It's as infection rates across the capital surge, and today Boris Johnson refused to rule out a third lockdown after Christmas. Good evening. In less than a week's time, coronavirus restrictions across the capital and beyond will be lifted for 5 days over Christmas. But despite the second lockdown and tougher Tier 3 measures, London is now the COVID hotspot, with Basildon in Essex seeing the second highest number of cases in England. Authorities there are advising people to get a test, even if they don't have symptoms, and especially if they're planning on seeing loved ones. Well, there have been more calls for the government to give clearer guidance on the rules over Christmas. And today, the Prime Minister refused to rule out a third lockdown if cases continue to rise. Well, from Basildon, Ria Chatterjee reports. Well, as infection rates in the capital continue to rise, there have been calls for more clarity from the government over the rules at Christmas, with healthcare professionals and politicians warning about the risk of lifting restrictions. Joining me now is Lisa Elliott, Regional Director for London from the Royal College of Nursing. Lisa, thanks so much for talking to us this evening. Now, we've heard from the doctors, we've heard from politicians, now the Royal College of Nursing warning that, the second or third wave potentially could just turn into this unrelenting tsunami, especially now that we're going to lift restrictions for 5 days over Christmas. We did hear from Boris Johnson earlier in the week, didn't we? And we heard from Chris Whitty as well. They seem to be trying to say that it is personal responsibility, that individuals have to assess the risk according to what they believe. But when we look at cases where there might be asymptomatic cases, there's really big problems there, isn't there, in making that assessment? We're hearing about London being the COVID hotspot. We've seen the cases in Basildon in Essex really rising dramatically there. What are your members telling you about what it's like on the front line, on the wards at the moment, and how bad things are? And also, we heard from Boris Johnson today. He hasn't ruled out the possibility of a third lockdown after Christmas, and it's really recognising the fact, acknowledging even that, we think cases are very likely to rise again. That's, for your members again, it looks like a very difficult winter ahead.
Yes.
Well, from midnight, the counties around the capital will join London in the highest level of coronavirus restrictions. Shops stay open, but bars, pubs and restaurants will all close their doors in Buckinghamshire, Bedfordshire, Berkshire and Surrey. Well, Carolyn Sim is in Guildford for us this evening. Carolyn, how's it looking there tonight? As ever, the reason for restrictions is to help ease pressure on our NHS and, of course, to save lives. In the last week, there have been a further 245 deaths in London hospitals of people who tested positive for COVID-19. And as admission numbers also rise, some hospitals say they are having to delay routine operations to keep their patients safe. Katie Barnfield reports. Now, there will, of course, be more on the latest COVID restrictions on the ITV News at 6:30. Here's Charlene White. A man who disguised himself as a woman before running out of his flat in Islington and sexually assaulting a passing jogger has been jailed. Now, even for a city used to trains running late, Crossrail will take some beating. The project was originally due to be completed 2 years ago, and its budget is now almost £4 billion more than first predicted. But TfL Commissioner Andy Byford has said he can guarantee it will finally open by June 2022 or even sooner, as our political correspondent Simon Harris reports. Next, it is an unlikely combination. Manager of Wycombe Wanderers, Gareth Ainsworth, on the vocals with Chelsea legend Petr Cech playing the drums. But you have heard it right. They have teamed up for a Christmas jingle. It's called Drawing Straws, and all the profits will go to dementia charities, something both are very passionate about. Before we speak to Gareth, let's have a listen. Now, we're used to seeing them delivering on the pitch, but today Spurs players were out delivering food to those who desperately need it. This year, charities say the use of food banks across the capital will be 60% higher than last year as the pressures of the pandemic continue. Sam Holder reports. Time for the weather now, and it's been pretty wet and grey out there, hasn't it? But how are things looking over the weekend as we head towards Christmas? Here's Manali Luca with a full forecast. And finally, with just 1 week until Christmas, the battle for the coveted #1 spot is heating up. Now in the running, some names you might recognise: Robbie Williams, Mariah Carey, and an unlikely duo, the Lewisham and Greenwich NHS Choir with Justin Bieber. Well, 5 years after beating the pop star to the 2015 top spot, the choir have added their voices to a special version of his track Holy, and it's all for charity. Sharon Thomas reports. And just before we go, there is time for a quick look at what's coming up this Sunday morning on All Around Britain at 11:55. But from us, that is it. We are back with the latest after ITV News at 10. Coming up, Charlene White with the ITV Evening News. But from me and the rest of the London team, bye-bye.